polyps or diverticuli or fibroid or a tumor or a cyst, it irritates that tissue. The tissue gets inflamed. The inflamed tissue is cooked because it's heated up. The cooked tissue rots. The rot tissue gets stiff. Now we're into what we call a bump, fibroid, cyst, tumor, simply because we put the waste in our system because we've been eating waste. Eating synthetics, acetic acid, vinegar, which is bad for the uterus, alcohol, which is bad for the uterus, you see. All these are synthetics. And to make the situation worse, we take synthetic dirt as medicine. Because you can look at an aspirin, look at BC, look at Tylenol, look at it, grind it up, what is it? It is synthetic dirt. The Europeans are specialists at processing things. They used to process us, call it seasoning, whatever. So they processed this dirt and made synthetic dirt, which they call medicine, then feed you bowel movement, which you call food. And then you wonder why your health is deteriorating. So the body is stuck with this kind of operation here of trying to deal with this waste that people are constantly putting in their system. All this is involved with the European rituals and ceremonies, especially with the knife closest to the plate to protect that food supply, especially with the penis-shaped franks or hot dogs, because this comes out of Greek food shapes of food. They shape food to resemble the sex organs. This is the sex organ. Being Christian with an evil spirit, which you call a fork, which is a devil's fork, you're not reading the sexual symbolism and the satanic worshiping here on this plate because you don't know European culture, rituals and ceremonies. You just think white people, but you have to study their rituals and ceremonies just like they study ours. So I just studied them, and I know the whole ritual going here. This is coming out of the Macedonian homosexual cult. It's quite simple. It's play on the paper. Nonetheless, this flowers here, they used to give flowers the shape of the testicles. They call them orchids. So when the Europeans go on a date, they give the woman balls. And they have one ball for each zodiac sign. That's why they give 12 roses. You don't know your European customs, rituals, and ceremonies, so all of this is kind of like, what's the brother talking about? But nonetheless, the chemicals are synthetic. They clog up the system, and they cause addiction. All drugs are addicting. People are addicted to Coca-Cola. You got to detox them off of it. People are addicted to McDonald's burgers because of the hormones in them. People have sex hormone addiction, which causes the external organs and tissue to grow faster than the internal organs, which causes them to crenate. People addicted to sex hormones, like little girls will have breasts at 9. You see, now we're causing the muscles and the bones to grow at a faster rate than the internal organs, which cause the internal organs to crenate because so much demand is made on them. This is what you call speeding up the aging process of the cells. And when you speed up the aging process of the cells that fast, the insides are like of a 20-year-old person is like 40. That's how you get into these children that drop dead in the cradle, which you call sudden infant crib death. That is death from aging. The child is so old inside that it dropped dead. The diet that the child is fed is too rich for it. It's drinking milk, it's eating food. It doesn't have the enzymes to break down meat until it's over 8 years of age. It doesn't have sucrase, which is the enzyme used to break down sucrose, because humans don't make that enzyme, and you're feeding it white sugar, which becomes an irritant. Aside from the fact it's made out of pork, which is another subject. Nonetheless, the end result of eating all these toxins is that the people end up in the hospital, cannot breathe on their own because they have so much waste in their lungs, and they're given the same diet that put them there in the first place. There it is, the IV, sugar and water. Now, the chemicals get trapped in the body, and the body tries to move them out. But all synthetic chemicals, according to Eli Lilly of Lilly Pharmaceutical Cartel, the drug pushers, the legal ones, the chemicals get into the system and block the nerve receptor sites and deteriorate the body's ability to feel good about itself, to feel good about yourself, to feel good about someone that looks like yourself. In other words, feel good about being black and feel good about other people that are black. So you begin to get into a chemically induced form of self-hatred. because the nerve receptor sites are blocked. Now, because of the deterioration of the reproductive system, the amniotic fluid that the child floats in is so toxic and acidic, aside from that it causes the baby to be in an unhealthy condition when it's carried in the womb. Because of the toxic, infested junk food diet of the African man, the sperm is now deteriorated and crippled with waste, and it's very acid. Then you have conception, which produces a child, and the child is born with a birth defect or deformed. Now we have early abortions or partial abortions of children who are so, what they call, deformed or just shouldn't live as they decide. They just decide this already by taking these little x-ray pictures which cause cancer. All mammograms cause cancer, remember that. All x-rays cause cancer. All sonograms cause cancer. All Dopplers cause cancer. This is all in the Government Accounting Office publication. I wrote the number in my book, Nutricide, for those who want to order it. It's free, and they'll list all the medical procedures that cause cancer. In other words, cause tumors, fibroids that destroy the black woman's womb. So we have what we call partial abortions, where they can abort the child up to 7th, 8th, or 9th month. The issue is, if you want to murder a child in that stage of in that trimester, you have to leave the head in the womb, and then you can call it abortion. So what they do is they leave the baby in, grab it by some forceps, which they call pliers. A layman would call them pliers. The medical people call their pliers forceps. So they grab the child with these forceps and yank the child out. Now, the forceps were devised in European rituals and ceremonies because they thought the woman was evil, and the man didn't want to put his hand on her vagina. But we know that he did something to get the child there, but in this ritual, they don't want to touch the vagina. So they take these pliers, clamp the child, and pull the child out of the womb. Then they get the head right to the opening of the uterus, which some people call some people call the cervix. Then they push the scissors, push it into the back of the skull, puncture into the skull, then open up the scissors, which makes a hole. Then they stick a little hose inside of the skull, which is like a hose, like a tube, and it sucks the brain out. And then the skull collapses, and then they pull the baby out. This is called a partial abortion, or late-term abortion. And then they sell the parts, because they use fetus to make vaccination and inoculation shots, and they also use the organs, tissue for transplants, because African children's skin is the most flexible and it can mate with other tissue more easily than any other race, so they sell a lot of these parts. So what we're trying to do is correct a condition here. Let me show you a healthy uterus. Let me show you how a healthy uterus looks. So we all know what I'm talking about. We're talking about the 3 layers in the uterus itself, serosus, which is the outer layer. Then we're talking about the muscular layer, which you call fiber, and some people say that's where the tumors are, and we call those fibroids because they're inside the fiber. Then we're talking about the endometrium, which is the inner layer of the uterus, which is right here. Sometimes that gets irritated by toxins and waste and gets inflamed, and that's when ladies say they have endometriosis, because the tissue gets inflamed. Now we have the vaginal wall, and of course this is the ovaries, and this is the fallopian tubes. This is a healthy uterus, and the 3 layers of tissue, skin, or germ layers. Now everything is structured this way in nature, especially in the human form itself. You have these 3 layers. So when I'm talking about skin, I would call the serosus the ectoderm. And I would call the muscle layer the mesoderm. And I would call the inside layer the endoderm. I just changed the name so you won't know what I'm talking about. Now if I'm talking about people, I would call the outside layer the ectomorphic people, which would be the Chinese and the Japanese. The mesomorphic people would be the Africans, and the endomorphic people would be the Europeans. Endomorphic means gut people. They have a lot of gut sounds, grunt sounds. They say, I have a gut reaction. They tell you what type of people they are. I I have a gut reaction. I have a gut feeling. And sure enough, they refer to a lot of stomach. They name themselves out after a lot of stomach and eating terms, like Hun. H-U-N means without spirit or without food. So you get the word Hun, H-U-N, hunter. Hungrier, hungry. And the tribe, the European tribe called the Huns. See, it's just when you get into understanding, they are endomorphic. They are basically driving on what you call animalism. They're predator people, and they prey on other people's cultures and all that kind of stuff. You should know that by now. If you're a former slave, you would know that. But nonetheless, we have these layers here. Understand that the reproductive system of the female functions basically the same as the males. The vaginal shaft gets erect. The uterus contracts just like the prostrate contracts and pulsates. Same thing occurs here. Direct same things. And when the vaginal shaft gets